Okay, I can't remember our intro for some reason. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us on today's episode of Can You Repeat That podcast? We're your hosts. My name's Leslie.
My name's Chantel.
And I am Atlas.
Okay, today we're going to be talking about a more serious topic, a war. One that would be described as senseless, a waste of supplies, time, and military effort. Today, we'll be talking about the time Australia went to war with the emus and lost.
All right.
I'd never heard of this before, and I'm so happy that I came across it. So, in order to understand the devastation these emus caused, we need to know a smidge bit of background. So, the emu, a large and flightless bird, was first displayed on Australia's national coat of arms in 1908. Due to it being their national bird, it was protected, similar to how the bald eagle is protected in the States. In 1914, World War I took a heavy toll on Australia, sustaining around 210,000 casualties, of which over 61,000 were killed or died of their wounds. At the time, this was approximately 4% of Australia's population, and it's still considered one of the most deadly conflicts it has seen. Unfortunately, when the veterans returned, many had received debilitating injuries and weren't able to find work. Also, if there's something that either of you know about this and you just want to slide it on in there, just feel free to interject. So, the government wasn't really helpful, shocking, and wasn't taking care of their veterans, also not shocking, which caused an uproar in the general public. At this time, Australia was also having a hard time keeping their people fed, so they came up with a solution for their veterans and for their food problem. A section of the countryside was divided into small plots and encouraged their veterans to become farmers. The food the vets grew would be put back into Australia's struggling communities to help feed them. However, this plan wasn't going to work well as they had hoped. First, the soil was not that great for growing food, and I doubt they gave them any help or resources to make the ground better for farming. Second, there were pests and vermin all over the place. Third, majority, if not all, the vets had no experience in farming, and plants are hard. Plants are really hard. Fourth, they were only given approximately 10 acres, and while that is a good chunk of land, it's not enough for a crop large enough to be the main food source for both the farmers, their family, and the people of Australia. Approximately 5,000 veterans were settled across the western side of the country with the hope of being able to make a living and profit off their plots. The western part of the country would be the most likely to be able to profit due to having a little bit better of a soil quality, but it wouldn't be long before problems arose. Australians have a long and bumpy history with the emus. At one point, they were looked at as something to be proud of. They were then classified as vermin, then were a protected species, and then deemed vermin again. In 1918, the emus began flocking to Western Australia and taking advantage of the now thousands of food crops. Local farmers tried their best to keep the emus out of their fields, but it seems the emus always had a way around the farmers. Upset and frustrated, the farmers decided to go to their government to help them with their emu problem. But the farmers did not go to the Minister of Agriculture. Instead, they went to the Minister of Defense, George Pearce, to help their emu infestation. But the farmers first had to sign an agreement saying that the farmers would be responsible for the cost of the operation and that Pearce would not take any blame for anything that could happen, including mission failure. 3 men were sent out with 2 machine guns and a camera crew to hunt down and take control of the land the farmers owned. I believe Pearce thought that the camera crew would be like good morale for the country or something. I don't really know, but it didn't work the way they hoped, and I'll get into it. So,
Kind of backfired overall.
yeah. So, and actually, the camera and the film and everything that they caught was one reason why this mission didn't work out the way that they had hoped. Maybe if that part wasn't included, it would have had a bit of a different outcome initially, but I don't know. The first battle would take place in Campion, where the men spotted a mob, which, fun fact, emus, like a flock, I guess, of emus is called a mob. The men spotted a mob of emus. The team found a spot to set up and fired at the emus. However, they split up into smaller groups and ran in every direction at approximately 50 miles per hour, 80 kilometers per hour. The men killed a number of birds, but the majority did escape. They wouldn't disclose the number of birds they killed, so I would say maybe 2 at least, but not many. The leader of the expedition would later compare emus to tanks, saying, quote, "If we had a military division with the bullet carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world," end quote. By the end of this, the total number of rounds shot per dead bird was 10 to 1, so it would take approximately 10 bullets to take down one bird. So far, emus 1, humans 0. The following days, they would take different approaches to try and decrease the 10 to 1 ratio. The next thing they tried doing was sneaking up on a large group of birds, getting as close as they could, and firing from short range. Either the men were incredibly unlucky, or the emus, which I kept typing emos instead of emus.
Get them emos.
Or the emus possessed some type of wizard-like skills, because both guns jammed just after 12 emus were killed. Emus were killed, and the rest got away. By this time, it also seemed that the emus were adapting. One of the soldiers would say, quote, "Each pack seems to have a leader now. A big black plumped bird would stand 6 feet high and keep watch over his mates while they carry out their work of destruction and warns them of our approach," end quote. So the emus were adapting to the hunters. Now we're emus 2, humans 0.5, and I'm only giving them half a point because they seem to have more luck this time. But emus are still winning. One of the sources I listed in the beginning, which I forgot to list, so I'm going to list the sources now. My sources are The Collector, Listverse, and Oversimplified on YouTube. One of the sources I list said, quote, "The men were feeling a little humiliated after losing to a pack of discount ostriches and decided to move further south."
Discount ostriches. I'm gonna have to remember that. I've never heard them called that before. I'm gonna have to remember to call emus that.
In order to try their hand at a different emu mob with a new strategy. The men would mount their guns to a vehicle and chase down the emus. However, just like everything else, this didn't work out. The emus moved too quickly and were unpredictable, causing the driver to swerve and lose control, crashing the vehicle. This was the only human injury this entire war. So, emus 3, humans -1. The press, of course, had lots to say about the failing missions. George Pearce, the manager of the 3-man army, was heavily criticized, and someone else who did not agree with what was happening suggested suggested they give medals to the emus who had won all 3 battles so far. Pearce called off the operation shortly after, but 4 days later, the farmers reapproached him and convinced him to try again. So now we are in season 2 of the Great Emu War. With more information and experience this round, they were much more successful in killing up to 300 emus a week. Although this time they were successful, the media had no interest at this point, and that's what I was leaning to whenever I said earlier. The amount of documentation of them failing caused the public to be like, what are we even doing? And then a 10 to 1 ratio is really sad.
I kind of feel that was a question that should have been asked at the start, not during the second attempt.
Yeah.
What are we even doing? You know?
Yeah. I don't know. Don't think about it too much because, some of them, they were only able to shoot a couple of times, but they didn't go down. So that's big sad. Our total score at this point is emus 4 and humans 0 still, but we're going to jump back in time a little bit to 1859 when 24 wild rabbits from England were released into the Winchelsea estate for some sport hunting. The rabbits did what rabbits do and repopulated very quickly, the few that did escape, and then by 1880, the invasive rabbit species had a population of almost 1 billion. In order to keep the rabbits out of the crops, a massive rabbit-proof fence was built, and it stretched 2,023 miles or 3,236 kilometers. This was successful and kept the rabbits out until the emus knocked it down at some point during this war. So not only were they dealing with emus, they've also been dealing with rabbits, like finishing whatever the emus have left. So I'm just imagining like the emus, they're surrounding a table and they're having a bird meeting, and one of them comes and like slaps their foot down on the table and says, "Bring in the bunnies," you know.
The emus are the cavalry and the bunnies are the infantry. Just send them in, sweep.
Yes. So Australia's government could see that Pearce's army and their plan wasn't going to work out. At this pace, it would take them about 4 months to wipe out the estimated 20,000 emus in the area. So instead, they announced a bounty system. For every emu killed, they would be awarded money, and civilians killing emus. So I looked everywhere to try and find how much they were awarded per bird, but I couldn't find anything on it, which made me a little sad. But nearly 57,000 bounties for dead emus were turned in within the next 6 months. So, aside from killing the emus, was there anything else that they did to protect their crops? I'm glad you asked. Yes, they put up better fences. And as of right now, emus are protected species in Australia again. It's kind of crappy that all they had to do was put up better fences, but
I mean, it probably would have been my first option, but what do I know?
right. It's really sad that it took 10 bullets on average to kill one bird.
Poor emus.
I know,
Justice for the emus.
right? But they are protected again now. At least there's that. But yeah, that's all I got. That one was relatively short.
I love emus.
Every Australian I've met always just act like they're tough shit, like with where they live and how 90% of the world's venomous creatures live on the same place as they do. And it's like, yeah, but dude, you got beat by a bunch of herd birds. I've heard the story before, of the emu war, but it just has always struck me as odd every time I hear about it again or see it again. It's like, how do you lose to flightless birds when you have literal machine guns?
I don't know. And I'm really curious as to why the guns jammed up. I like the thought of wizard emus, though.
Magic emus, yep.
Yep.
I mean, have you guys seen the emus from TikTok, Emmanuel and Karen?
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
They're spicy, so
They are a little scary.
I would be a little scared.
It gives credence to why the Royal Australian Artillery lost.
Yeah. I would be a little scared.
And they hiss, don't they? They hiss.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I think
That's
so.
scary. Actually, you know what? I'm giving Australia a half a point.
A pity point.
Yeah, pretty much. Because they are kind of scary.
They're pretty spicy. So, I mean,
I think, have you ever seen the little, the videos of baby emus just hopping around?
yes.
That's my favorite. That's what I was picturing. And I forgot about those emus on TikTok, Karen. And I remembered just now how kind of scary they are. So
Well, they look so cute as babies.
they just do hops. They hop around. Do you know what we're talking about, Atlas?
I do.
Ugh, they're really cute.
And then they grow up and get an attitude. So
I feel like the same thing could be said about
everything.
many things, including human children.
Yeah.
The emus, I suppose, also have the benefit of having the Domorth. I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, but I'm going to try it anyway. I always mess it up. Domornophidae, which were thunderbirds, as an ancestor that they evolved from. So
I did not know that. I was contemplating on looking up emu facts just to add in here for funsies.
Yeah, Dromornithids were their ancestors, and Dromornithids were approximately 10-foot tall flightless birds. Basically, like what I suppose what you would call a super emu.
10-foot emu. Ugh, that's scary.
Which is actually also an ancestor of the modern cassowary. And if you know anything about them,
Cassowary. Hold on, I gotta Google it.
cassowaries are another flightless bird similar to emus and ostriches, and they literally stomp their prey to death.
Oh,
they
yeah,
look
I've seen those
rad.
They
things.
have no problem going after things that are larger than them.
They look really pretty though.
Yeah, they
The
look
orange
cool.
Oh, very pretty.
and blue.
Very pretty.
I've seen them.
But then the tagline is Earth's deadliest bird. So
Yep.
maybe not so pretty.
How big are they? They're not very big.
No, no. Cassowaries, they're only 176 to 200 pounds, like, or 80 to 95 kilograms for those of you who are on the metric system.
Huh. Let's see.
They're not big. They're not big at all, comparatively speaking to their cousins.
Okay, well, they're bigger than I thought. They're about 6 feet tall. Holy cow.
Yeah, just comparatively speaking to other birds in
They're
that
6 feet
particular
tall.
family.
They're bigger than us,
Yeah.
Leslie, so they're
I don't know.
tall.
These pictures that I'm looking at make them look like they're maybe a foot or two tall. And I was like, that's the most deadly, but it's only a foot or two tall. I see now. That thing's freaking huge. I'd be scared of that. I am scared of that. I'm scared of that and emus apparently now. Their neck just doesn't go up as tall.
Yes, it's like got a little bend to
Yeah,
it.
their neck goes more forward than up compared to like the ostrich and emu. Interesting.
Speaking of that emu ancestor, I'm going to share a picture in the Discord for you to take a look of size comparison from a reconstruction of its skeleton.
Oh my gosh, it looks like a really
So I'm willing. Yeah, the more I think about it, emus have a genetic heritage advantage.
you know what? That just looks like a really tall dodo. That one is less scary to me because of that.
Maybe it's because it's like it's a depiction of what it, you know what I mean? I don't know. But I feel like if I saw that in person, no thank you.
I mean, yeah.
Oh yeah, no, definitely not. I'm running.
Interesting. Well, did I leave anything out? Any fun facts? I think this one was really easy to research. So,
I do remember one quote from Major Meredith himself during the first operational attempt. That was a quote that I always found funny. He said, "If we had a military division with the bullet-carrying capacity of these birds, it would face any army in the world, for they can face machine guns with the invulnerability of tanks."
yeah, I have that quote in there.
I couldn't
Mhm.
remember if you'd said
I
it or not.
didn't say the whole thing because I said they compared them to tanks. Quote: "If we had a military division with the bullet carrying capacity, blah blah blah."
So, moral of the story: don't fuck with the emus, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I've learned. Oh, and this whole thing, it was only like a month long
Wow.
from start to finish. So, and then after they stopped that and they introduced the bounty system, like I said, within 6 months, there were like 57,000 bounties turned in, and then they stopped.
Can you imagine if they did something like that today?
I
That would be crazy.
I mean, population culling is not really an odd thing, but it's nowhere near the extent of armed forces nearing to get involved.
Yeah.
I remember here where I live here in Michigan a few years ago, we had a whitetail overpopulation, but didn't need to call in the National Guard for that. wasn't really necessary.
Yep. All right. Who wants to do the outro?
I can do it. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. As always, you can find any pictures pertaining to the story on our Instagram and Twitter at CYRTpod. Be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. If you have a topic suggestion or want to share a story, send us an email at cyrtpod@gmail.com. Until next time, happy listening.